Retrofitting your warehouse for maximum efficiency and ROI. Matt Kelly is Director of Business Development with Hai Robotics. Hello, Matt.
Hello, it's good to be here.
Welcome. Thank you for being with me. Let's talk about this thing called the Brownfield reality. That is the reality of installing systems in an existing facility. What current challenges are companies facing when thinking about implementing automation in this sort of a setting?
I think the first challenge is space. They're bursting at the seams. They've done everything they can to get as much volume out of their facility as they can, and they've done a great job. There's a lot of facilities that have automated in pieces, but now they're kind of looking for that next big leap, and unfortunately they're out of space. And it's very difficult to implement automation when you're out of space. You need staging area, you need laydown space. And so as you look at an operation that maybe needs a huge system, they've got the throughput demand in the market for it, but they're out of space to be able to implement a system of that size. So they have to figure out what is kind of the lowest hanging fruit. Where is that entry point that they can start small and then scale up? And that really is the secret. And I think you see a lot of automation at a show like this that's trying to solve that challenge exactly.
Do you determine that entry point by what you think is most important to your operation, or where you're experiencing the worst efficiency and productivity? I mean, what are the standards or the criteria by which you make that decision?
Yeah, I think you got to look at where the biggest pain point is, of course, and then where do they see the ROI coming from? Is that picking? Is that downstream consolidation? What is the biggest bottleneck that they're currently facing? And let's solve that first. But I think too, it's very important to understand, what they've done. What kind of Band-Aids have they put on their operation to get the most out of it? And how do you kind of peel back that Band-Aid so that you can implement a solution like, all the different technologies you see at a show like
that? Those Band-Aids were done in kind of semi-emergency situations,
Yeah.
one over here,
Yeah.
one over there,
Yeah.
until there's just a mass of Band-Aids,
Yeah.
which you don't really want to have.
And it's not easy to automate. Right?
Right.
When you're in that kind of situation, you have to kind of figure out where to change things. And a lot of times you are out of room. A lot of times you have legacy systems. A lot of times you have employees who have gotten used to doing it one way. They've got that tribal knowledge that they have taken advantage of over the years. And now you have to take a look at automation.
Of course, it goes without saying that you cannot simply shut down your operation and take time to implement a new system. You're doing this while you're actually still in operation. People like to say it's like changing the tires on a car going 70 miles an hour.
Exactly.
Definitely a challenge there, right?
Exactly, yeah. So you got to figure out, just like on a racetrack, how to pull it in to the pit stop, change those tires quickly, and get it back into production. So I think that's also a big challenge that you highlighted.
All right, so let's say you've identified those pain points, and maybe you have an order in which you want to start implementing this warehouse automation. Give us more tips on how implementation can actually succeed. What are some other ideas and ways that you can make it work for you in a brownfield facility?
Yeah, I think you got to have a plan, and you got to understand what the entire system is going to look like. So as you start to build, let's say you find that little bit of an entry point, you've got to also understand, what does the future look like? I think too often people automate without a perspective on what it needs to be in the years to come.
Right.
And now they've realized a mistake has happened and it's hard to go backwards. So figure out where that entry point is, have a plan to scale up, and then you can kind of start at whatever point, and now you have a plan forward.
Is it easy to be dazzled? I mean, we can walk the halls here at Chromat and just think of all this cool stuff. And gee, I'd really like that in my facility, but you're not really thinking through whether it really is for you.
Yeah, it is. And I think my answer to that is always choose the simplest thing, right? That's always the best choice, is the simplest one.
Yeah.
It's very easy to look at all the different things you can do, and it's a blank canvas, right? We can do this, we can do that if we had all the budget in the world. But find the simplest solution, because that's the one that will have the lowest cost of ownership and the greatest ROI for the customer, and really the most flexibility. I mean, these businesses are evolving. They're growing. Sometimes they're growing sideways. They're taking on a new business, a new application, and whatever system, whatever technology they select has got to be able to grow with them and evolve.
Classic term for that, of course, is Occam's razor, the simplest solution that's available. So that's some good advice. Okay, where does it start though with the decision making? How do you help with automation, the decision making that happens from the top, which has to be authorized first before you can then put the system in? How do you reach those top level senior executives and get them to buy in on this stuff?
Yeah, I think you got to start quickly. A lot of times people wait for the board level to happen way downstream or, in the process.
Yeah.
You got to start with education right away. So as you're getting your kind of middle layer, the operations, the engineers on board with the technology, you've also got to be pushing up to understand what that board level needs from a financial standpoint, because that's the ROI. And anybody at the board level, anyone who's the president, they care a lot about profit. And the solutions that we put in place and a lot of the technology here, it's driving costs down, driving efficiency up. All those things are good for the bottom line.
But it depends on whether you're having a short-term view or a long-term view. You can say, I care a lot about profit, which means I don't want to spend a whole lot of money on a system right now because I'm meeting quarterly expectations to my shareholders. That's a short-term view because you're not looking forward to the time when this systems can actually help you in the long run. So
yeah, I think of the short-term view is a big challenge. There's this obsession in the market, and it's very unfortunate, of a 2-year ROI. And there's a lot of technologies that can provide that, but I think that's also very short-sighted because you have to think long-term. Because by the time you get through the design process, the sales process, and implementation, you're years down the road anyway, and you don't want to be left behind. A lot of these companies are still very manual. I think 70% of warehouses in North America are still manual.
that's kind of a shocking statistic, considering all we talk about warehouse
mind-blowing.
automation. Wow.
Yeah, it's even worse with 3PL. So by the time you do automate, you've got to worry that your competition has left you behind. And if I was at the board level making these decisions, I would want to be on the forefront, leading the charge into automation, not playing catch up.
Okay, we talked about getting motivated at the top. What about getting employees on the floor excited about automation? Because their first impulse is going to be fear, rejection, their jobs are at stake. How do you get those people in?
It starts with transparency, communication, explaining to them what their life is going to be like with automation. When you think about a picker who has to walk 10 miles a day to do picking tasks, that's painful. I don't want to walk. I mean, I walked a lot here today and my feet are about to fall off. So that in and of itself, you have to put yourself into the mind of that employee and help them understand that this automation is here to supplement, to improve their life, to get a little bit more productivity out of them so that they're happier. They're excited to come to work. I mean, turnover is a huge challenge for operations, and it would behoove them to not only automate, but to communicate to their employees that they are now entering into an environment in their warehouse that is automated, easier, more fun, and more exciting. It should be an easy sell, in my opinion, to an employee.
Okay, thanks so much, Matt, for helping us understand how you kind of get behind the reality of automating a so-called brownfield facility. A lot of challenges, but some good advice on how to do that. May I take a moment, though? Can we talk just very briefly about Hai Robotics itself? New product you might guys have out there? What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so Hai Robotics, we've been around since 2016. We're now on our 1,500th installation globally. So we've got a lot of customers, and I think, one of the things we're most proud of is the customers that come back and continue to expand with us. They've had a second site. We're on our 47th site with one of our largest customers. So we are a part of their journey and their success, and we're very proud of that. We've just released a new product called Hai Pick Climb. It's been on the market for about a month. We have 10 sites sold, and we're going to have our first go live in June, just outside of California. A very, very big system. So we're very excited about this, and it does fit very well into that brownfield environment. It doesn't need floor remediation, which is a huge pain point for a lot of technology today. It could also deploy very quickly. So we talked about ROI and getting the board of directors on board with this type of decision. The faster you implement, the faster you can start seeing that return on investment. And we've had some implementations under 3 months, but we're right in that kind of 6 to 7 month PO to go live window, and that puts us in a very competitive position and a lot of value for the market.
Thanks again, Matt. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We've been speaking with Matt Kelly of Hai Robotics. Thank you very much for watching.